Hello everyone, Coach Joe here. So every athlete, no matter how experienced or how novice you are, experiences injuries from time to time. It's just something that happens. So, what do you do when you get an injury? How do you heal it? What do you do about it? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, when addressing an injury, there are a couple of acronyms that can help you remember the steps to take and what to do. We used to use the RICE acronym, which stood for Rest, Ice, Compression, and Elevation. The idea was that you were resting the injury to prevent further damage, further injury, things like that. And you were putting ice on it to cut down on inflammation and swelling, and you were wrapping it or taping it to provide compression to cut down on the swelling and provide support, and you were also raising it above heart level to help with blood flow and circulation and swelling and inflammation and things like that. But the thing was about the rest. You don't always necessarily need to rest an injury. It's not always beneficial. In fact, sometimes it can even be detrimental to certain injuries in certain situations. So, what is more preferred now is the police method. And this stands for protection, optimal loading, ice, compression, and elevation. So basically, it's exchanging the rest for protection and optimal loading instead. And so what this means is it's more like physical therapy. So you're not using the joint or the injured part or whatever. Instead, you are protecting it, but providing optimal loading, which means optimal proper movement. If you sprained your wrist, instead of wrapping the wrist up and just not using it, you would use it some. You would do rotation exercises to keep that joint loose, because sometimes what can happen is your joint can get stiff if you're not using it. So if you're resting it and not using it, it stiffens up and the muscles can atrophy. So what happens is when you're healed up, you have to go through a process again of loosening that joint back up and building those muscles back up. But if you do those, like the rotation exercises and a little bit of some exercises to keep those muscles going as well, then the joint has an opportunity to heal because you're not fully using it and you're not putting undue strain on it, but you're not letting it stiffen and atrophy. So that's why it's more preferred to use police method instead of RICE method now. And the rest of it's all the same. The ice, compression, and elevation. For the ice helps constrict the blood vessels, which can help with inflammation and swelling. And the compression is like holding onto the joint, and it also constricts things, and that helps with the swelling. And the elevation is more about blood flow and that helps the swelling as well. So these are just a couple of acronyms that can help you remember certain things that you can do to help an injury heal the best that you can when it happens. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe and ring that bell icon so you don't miss the next video. And remember, train hard and stay inspired. And I'll see you next time.